Today we're going to learn all about bits, well, at least the most common ones. There are so many bits out there and there's so much information. I've tried to distill it down into the most common types. Hey there, my name's Bee with Top Flight Equestrian, and we will get right to it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Oh boy, are you ready? Because I am ready. We're going to learn all about bits today. Hallelujah. Again, this is just an overview. There is so much information out there. I'm just going to go over the most common types today. So a bit, you put it in your horse's mouth, but what is it actually doing? How does a horse know that when you pull back to stop and pull left to turn and flex and bend, all this stuff? How does it know? Well, you've taught it, or someone's taught the horse to do this. The horse has learned over years of doing this that when they feel pressure in certain parts of their face or their mouth, they're supposed to respond in a certain way. So someone taught them this. They don't come naturally knowing this information. So where do bits apply pressure? So things like the hard palate, which is at the very top, the roof of the horse's mouth for a better term, their tongue, the bars of the horse's mouth. The bars of the horse's mouth you can see really well here on this skull. It's the spot where there's no teeth naturally occurring. So right back here underneath the lips. It's also going to work on the lips as well. Some bits, when attached to the bridle and have a curb chain, will work on the poll and the chin as well. And then not all bits work on the nose, but your bitless bridles will work on the nose. The bits only work on the nose if the bit has a noseband attachment connected to it. Otherwise, it's not going to have any nose pressure. But those are going to be your main ways that the bit sits in the mouth and applies pressure, either along with different things on the outside, like your curb chain right here, or just inherently inside the mouth sitting in a certain way. How else do they work? So bits not only put pressure on different structures inside the mouth, they also have certain properties that makes them different from one another. So a stable bit isn't going to move a whole lot in the mouth versus a bit that gives a little bit of pre-signal. What I mean by that is pre-signal bits, the horse can feel slight changes as the bit moves in the mouth before you actively use the reins, and the horse can respond, almost like getting a yellow light before a red light at a stoplight, that it's like, oh, I know that that's going to be red, I better prepare. Versus a stable bit isn't going to do anything until you actively use it, so it stays more stable in the horse's mouth. And that can be beneficial for horses that get overwhelmed, that they don't need a whole lot of information. They just want it to work and then stop immediately, versus more advanced horses that kind of know what's going on and they can help you out and respond really well by having a little bit of pre-signal so that they can be one step ahead of you. Next thing is lateral pressure. So some bits apply pressure on the outside of the horse's face, just like if you were to put your hand on someone's back and guide them somewhere. A little bit of pressure on the horse's side of the face can help guide them through turns and help them to turn. And then leverage is another one. So this is an example of a leverage bit, and it just means that when you pull back with 1 pound of pressure, it amplifies that on the horse, making you essentially stronger, and the horse feels a stronger signal from you. So the first type of bits we're going to go over are our snaffle bits. So snaffle bits just means non-leverage. So when you pull back on any one of these bits here, it's going to equate 1 pound of pressure with 1 pound that they feel. I'd like to thank today's sponsor of this video. It's you! Thank you so much for watching and liking and subscribing. I truly appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. You won't regret it. If you do want to support me a little further, there is a link in the description below to buy me a coffee. But ultimately, just liking and subscribing to my channel is the best. I appreciate it. So let's move on to more of what makes a snaffle a snaffle. So snaffle anatomy, very, very simple. You have your cheek piece or your ring on the outside. You have your mouthpiece on the inside, which all bits are going to have that, and then you have a joint in the middle. But really, this outside piece is what makes a snaffle a snaffle. You see it's one continuous ring here. There's no shanks, there's no extra pieces. This is really what makes a snaffle a snaffle. Very, very simple. Snaffle action. This horse isn't very happy, but you pull back on the rein and it pulls back in the horse's mouth. That's it. Depending on what the mouthpiece is, which we're going to go over in just a little bit later, that's going to change on where it applies pressure in the mouth. But for the most part, snaffle action, you pull back, it pulls back, one-to-one pressure. So there are many different types of snaffles. The first one we're going to go over is the loose ring. You can see it here. So a loose ring is going to have low stability, which means it has high pre-signal. So this is going to move a lot in the horse's mouth. Some horses like that, other horses don't. Generally, more experienced horses like it a little more because I can pick up on what you're about to tell them with the bit. And younger, more inexperienced horses don't like that because it's too much noise. They don't know enough yet and it's overwhelming. There's low lateral pressure. So you can see here that the bit is being pulled through the horse's mouth. So not giving you a whole lot of lateral pressure when the bit can be pulled through the horse's mouth. And then here you have a bit guard, which we're going to talk about in a second. So loose rings can be easily pulled through the side of the mouth. That's why there's not a whole lot of lateral pressure because you can just pull the bit all the way through, as you can see in these two photos. Loose rings also need to be sized larger than most other bits because they can pinch. You can kind of see here in this photo that the lips are getting pinched by the ring. So make sure you size your loose rings up so that they're about a 1/4 inch on either side to prevent pinching. And then you can also use these bit guards here, some rubber discs that can just make it a little bit nicer for the horse and prevent any pinching. Okay, next one we have is egg butt snaffle. So your egg butt snaffle is going to be more of a stable bit in your horse's mouth. It's got a fixed ring here. It doesn't rotate. Doesn't have much pre-signal because it has stability. It's going to have a little bit of lateral pressure on the sides there. It's not going to have any leverage because it is a snaffle bit. And possible match for this one is going to be horses that like a stable bit but don't need much turning help. I like using this bit on a variety of horses, especially young horses, and it's generally my go-to type of cheek piece on a bit. Next one is D-ring. So D-ring is going to give you more stability, and of course the more stability you have, the less pre-signal you have, and then it's going to give you more lateral pressure than the egg butt. As you can see, it's got these longer arms here compared to the egg butt, and so it's going to help with that lateral pressure. It's again not a it's a snaffle, so there's no leverage, and I like to use this on horses that like a stable bit and maybe need a little more help turning. These are very popular in the hunter world. So here we just have loose ring, egg butt, D-ring just right up against each other just so you can see the differences in each one. They're similar, but they do have their differences. Okay, moving on, we've got our full cheek. This is going to give you the most stability and the least amount of pre-signal and a lot of lateral pressure. No leverage because it's a snaffle bit, and I like to use this on horses that like a stable bit and need even more help turning. So I think about ponies that have short necks that the kids just can't turn their horses, or big drafts that don't quite understand and need a whole lot of help understanding turning right and left and that lateral pressure. So I like full cheeks for those type of horses. Okay, next one is a bit that has a little bit of controversy surrounding it. So people used to think that the Boucher, it looks like Boucher, but it's pronounced Boucher, that the Boucher added pull pressure and gave you a little bit of leverage, but they're finding out now that it actually does the opposite. It actually aids in pull relief. So it's going to have mild stability, no pre-signal, going to have a little bit of lateral pressure, but not much, no leverage because it is not a curb bit. And I like to use it on horses that dislike pull pressure. It's very, very helpful with horses that are a little sensitive up here at the pull, just kind of give them a little bit of a relief. But just know that some people will tell you that it has a little bit of leverage and it applies pull pressure. The research I'm reading is the opposite, but I'm open to discussions. Okay, last one is gonna be one that you don't see that often. And again, this is just a really compressed little list. There's plenty of other Snaffles out there, but this is my little list that I've put together. But this is probably the least common that you're gonna see. It's called a Fulmer, and it's a combination of a loose ring and a full cheek. And you can see it right here. And the cool thing about a Fulmer is since it has low stability, it has high pre-signal, so your horse can kind of tell what's going on, and it also has a lot of lateral pressure. So this is a very unique combination of horse that might have a little trouble turning, but still likes to know what's going on with a little bit of a heads up, like a little bit of a yellow light. There's no leverage because it's a Snaffle bit, and yeah, it's a really great bit for those horses that do want to know what's going on, but might not be the best at turning. So here's a handy little checklist. Feel free to pause the video and take a screenshot. I'm going to post this on my website as well. The link will be in the description. It's topflightequestrian.com, but so that you can have access to this. But it's just kind of puts it all into a nice little grid formula. I didn't go over too much on the action of the Snaffles because they really only act on the lips, because we're only talking about the outside of the bit at this point. We're going to go over the inside, which is very, very important. But right now we're just going on the outside, and that's the lips. We've only gone up to Fulmer, so the next ones we're going to go over are these next three. They are going to be leverage bits or curb bits, and we're going to talk more about those. Compared to our Snaffle anatomy, our curb anatomy is quite different. There's a lot more going on here. So really all you need to focus on are the outside pieces here. This is the cheek pieces, just like we had in our Snaffle. But if you remember on our Snaffle, it was just one circle. We've got all this other stuff. So if we look at the mouthpiece here, anything above the mouthpiece, anything like this is going to be called the purchase, and anything below the mouthpiece is going to be called the shank. And the whole thing is called the cheek. A lot of leverage bits have a curb chain, but not all. And then the stuff that I wrote in the middle is just information on the mouthpiece itself. You have your bars and you have your port here. And then the port, that curve, is actually called a mullen, which I thought was pretty cool. Remember our Snaffle action. We pulled back, the bit pulled back, one-to-one pressure, you're good. So curb actions are a little more involved, and not every curb is going to look like this, but this is just an example. So this is actually a double bridle. We're going to touch base on these a little bit, but it actually just, this picture showed the action of the leverage just really, really nicely, so that's why I chose it. So when you pull back, this is your curb rein on the bottom here. When you pull back on the curb rein, it rotates the purchase forward towards the front of the horse's face as the shank comes backwards. Now when it does that, it presses on the chin groove via the chain, the curb chain, and so that applies chin pressure. Now that makes the horse want to do this motion. Now when this is going back and this is going forward and this is pushing here, it's also pressing down on the cheek piece and giving you pull pressure as well. So this type of curb bit makes the horse do this motion. It pushes the poll down and it makes them want to tuck their chin in. There are many different types of curb bits. The ones we're going to go over today are going to be the Kimberwick, the Pelham, and the Dutch Gag. And as you can see, there's different types that you can use the Pelham with different types of reins. You can do 2 reins, which is ideal, or the converter. And then the Dutch Gag as well can have 2 rings on the bottom or 1 ring on the bottom. So first one's going to be our Kimberwick. Now the Kimberwick is going to have high stability, which means it has low pre-signal. It's going to have some lateral pressure, not a ton, and it is a leverage bit. It is a curb bit. It's going to provide leverage. So when you pull back on a Kimberwick, it is going to increase the pressure. So it's not 1-to-1, it's 1-to-2, 1-to-3. And it depends on where you have the reins as to how much leverage you have. One of the reasons I like Kimberwick is you can put it on this upper slot and it really doesn't give you that much leverage. It gives you enough, but but not a ton. And then you can always drop it down to the lower slot if you need a little bit more. I like using a Kimberwick for less experienced riders needing control because you don't need two reins and they're not typically not overly harsh. All right, next one's going to be our Dutch gag. Now this one is a more severe bit. It has a gag rotation of this ring here. It's going to always be a loose ring so that the ring can rotate up in the horse's mouth. It's going to have mild stability, meaning mild pre-signal. It's going to have low to mild lateral pressure. It is going to have leverage because as you pull this back, this rotates down and pulls, aka the term gags, pulls the bit up into the horse's mouth, really working on the horse's lips. So this is a good bit for strong horses that need leverage, that tolerate the pull pressure of this going back and this coming down. But Dutch gags don't come with a curb chain or any sort of strap that goes underneath the chin, and some people criticize this bit for not having that, but it's the way it's designed. But this is more of a very strong horse leverage bit. Now you can apply the bit the reins to different spots to make it more or less leverage. So you could even apply it to the big ring here, or to like it has right here, or to the middle ring, or down on the bottom ring if you really need a lot of leverage. So there's some play with how much leverage you can have with this bit, and some people do ride with two reins just so you have a little more flexibility in how much pressure you're using. Okay, next we have the Pelham. The Pelham is one of my more favorite bits for experienced riders that have a horse that's a little difficult to control, because there's a lot that you can do with it, especially if you have two reins. So it's going to be a pretty stable bit. It's not going to have a ton of pre-signal, but if you know how to work the curb rein down at the bottom, you can actually do a little bit of pre-signaling with this bit. But inherently it doesn't have a whole lot. There's some mild lateral pressure, and it is a leverage bit because we have our purchase and our shank, and it's going to be my favorite bit for those experienced riders needing just a little more control and finesse, because you can just ride off of this rein a whole bunch and only use your bottom one when you really need it. Now a lot of people will use a converter with this, and that's fine. It just kind of dulls both of the actions of the rein. So if you need that for a little bit, that's totally fine. But if you can ride with two reins, that's going to give you the most bang for your buck with this bit. Okay, we're not going to talk too much about double bridles, but I did want to include this in here because a lot of people get them confused on double bridles versus Pelhams, and they think they're the same thing, but they are not. So a double bridle is a bridle with two bits, literally a snaffle bit and a curb bit. So a Pelham is just one bit with two reins. So that's going to be the difference between your double bridle, which is seen in high level dressage, and your Pelham, one constructed bit versus two completely separate bits. Okay, I'm going to touch just gently, briefly on the bitless hackamore scenario. This is going to work mainly on the horse's nose. It's pretty high stability if you have it situated correctly and at the right tightness. It is going to give some pre-signal with the sides of the shanks here. It doesn't have a ton of lateral pressure because the hackamore can slide around, but it can have a little bit. It absolutely has leverage because each one of these things are shanks pulling down, creating leverage, especially with the curb chain, which is generally on all of them, and creating pull pressure as well. And people who like to use this have welfare concerns with using bits, or the horse has tension with bits. They've tried everything. Maybe there's something going on in their mouth, whatever, but they can use a hackamore and it's just nicer for the horse. And then again, here is that little that little chart that I have. I'll put this on my website, topflightequestrian.com, but this is just the whole thing here. Okay, that's the outside. So we went over the outside of our snaffle and our curb. We still have the inside of all the bits. So they're just like when you're boot shopping for yourself, you've got your foot size and your calf size and your calf height. Well, we've got the same thing for all these bits. We've got what does the outside look like, what does the inside look like, and what's the size. So lots of different variables to each bit here, and we're going to go over all of these: the mullen mouth, single jointed, double jointed, low port, French link, and again, there's probably 8 million bits out there. I'm just going to go over some common ones. Waterford, leather, Dr. Bristol, slow twist, copper roller. You're going to know all of these in no time. Okay, so leather bits. They are actually becoming more popular, especially for young horses or overly sensitive horses. And it softens with use. It's gentle and moldable around the tongue and the bars, and a lot of horses take to them quite well. So I like them a lot for green horses for this reason, but you just have to make sure that you're checking this bit often because they can chew through the leather. So just make sure, safety reason, you're checking that bit. Mullen mouth is going to be straight across and generally with a little mullen in the middle. That little curve is called a mullen, and it provides some tongue relief. So the action of this bit is going to be pressure across the tongue and the bars, but there are no joints, and it's going to be great for sensitive or low palated horses that that can't tolerate any palate pressure. Palate's the roof of their mouth, so green horses also do well with this bit. Single jointed bit. This is a very, very common bit. Probably most horses go in this, and it's not as gentle as you might think. I want you to do a little exercise. I want you to grab a single jointed bit if you have one and just place it over your arm here and just squeeze it. And you'll find that it actually does not feel very good. And that's mimicking the action of the horse's tongue and the bars of their mouth. So single jointed bit has one joint in the middle, has a nutcracker action, so it kind of squeezes the bars and the tongue and pokes the roof of the mouth. So a possible match for a single jointed bit is going to be a horse with a high palate, that they have room for that bit in there, and a medium to soft mouth. Overly sensitive horses are not going to particularly like this bit. Next one is going to be our double jointed bit. So it's going to be a little softer than your single jointed bit. It's not going to have any palate pressure. It distributes the pressure more evenly, and it lays across the tongue and the bars of the horse's mouth. It's going to be great for sensitive horses or horses with low palates. So when you look in the side of your horse's mouth, if there's not a whole lot of space in there already, there's not going to be a whole lot of space with a bit in there. So if you have one of those horses with not enough real estate in their mouth, this one might be a great option. Okay, your French link is going to have this dog bone in the middle, and it's going to lay flat across the tongue. So it's going to still work on the bars and the tongue, but it's going to have a little more tongue pressure than, say, the double jointed lozenge bit. And so it's great for, again, sensitive or low palate horses that can tolerate a little bit of tongue pressure. All right, your low port, this is gonna allow some tongue relief. So if your horse has a large tongue or does not like tongue pressure, this is a great option for them. So it doesn't give too much palate pressure unless your horse has a significantly low palate, but it's good for most horses needing that tongue relief and have normal to high palates. Okay, your copper roller is technically a single jointed snaffle, but I wanted to add it in here because it's something that you will see. It's got these copper rollers that literally roll, and it's great for encouraging salivation. They think that copper helps to encourage dry-mouthed horses to salivate. So if you have a horse that is constantly dry-mouthed and you want it to have a little bit of salivation, this is a great option to go with as long as they are tolerant of a single jointed snaffle. Okay, slow twist is going to give you a little more control over a stronger horse. So it's, again, going to be a single jointed, so it's going to poke the roof of their mouth and have the nutcracker action. But if you're really soft with the bit, the slow twist on these on the bars of the bit here aren't going to do anything. But if you have to absolutely take a pull, it's going to have a sharper contact point, not enough to hurt the horse or to cause any lacerations, but enough that they can feel that sharper contact point over a smooth piece of metal. So horses that can tolerate a single jointed snaffle and can get a little strong and will respond to a half halt generally do well with a slow twist. Okay, so next one's going to be our Dr. Bristol. So the Dr. Bristol is a double jointed snaffle that has this larger plate, similar to our French link, but this is angled in a way that it presses into the horse's tongue more at an angle. So it kind of digs into the horse's tongue, so it adds sharper tongue pressure. This is not going to be this is not going to be a bit that I would use on any green horses, only horses that are hard mouthed or very strong, and it's definitely a more severe bit. Now, with all these bits that I'm talking about, if you do have to go to a more severe bit, always be working on getting back to something that's less harsh. But sometimes you need to use it as a tool. It's never a solution, but just a tool to help get you back on track. Okay, next one is the Waterford. So the Waterford has multiple joints. It's all these joints here, and it kind of collapses around the mouth. There's no solid surface for the horse to lean on. So it's great for horses that try to kind of grab the bit and run, but this is definitely not recommended for any green or sensitive horses. It's only recommended for horses that are strong and like to brace against the bit, because they can't really do it very well with how many joints there are here. And here is another chart about each thing. So where each bit works in the horse's mouth. Does it work on the tongue bars or the hard palate? And the possible horse and rider match that's going to work for this. Again, I'll put this on my website, and feel free to pause this and take a picture of it so that you can have this for your reference. Always remember that a bit is not a solution, it's a tool. So choosing the right one depends on so many factors. If you're getting lost and getting frustrated, I highly recommend hiring a bit fitter. They can bring a whole bunch of bits out to you and can try out a bunch of them just in a rapid fire succession. They'll also know and look in your horse's mouth at their anatomy and low palate versus high palate, thick tongue, all those things, and can guide you in the right direction. But always be working towards being the best rider you can be and having the most gentlest bit that you can get away with. Comment below with what worked for your horse. Have any tips or tricks that you want to share with us? I'd love to hear it. And as always, thanks for watching. Check out my other videos, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers!